Welcome to Buy or Buy. Let's jump right into this explainer and reintroduce you to what is arguably the most over-engineered JDM legend ever hand-assembled in Nagoya, Japan. We're talking about the 1991 to 1999 Mitsubishi 3000GT VR-4, powered by the absolutely legendary 6G72 3.0-liter twin-turbo V6. Oh, and a quick fun fact right out of the gate. If you were in North America between 1991 and 1996, you've probably seen this exact same beast cruising around badge-engineered as the Dodge Stealth R/T twin-turbo.
But let's be real about what this car actually represents. The 3000GT VR-4 is essentially what happens when Mitsubishi looks at the 1990 Acura NSX and says, you know what? We will build a car with twin turbos, all-wheel drive, four-wheel steering, active suspension, active exhaust, active front aero, active rear aero, dual airbags, and a 6-speed Getrag, and we will sell our spaceship for half the price, absolutely beat the NSX in AutoWeek testing, and 33 years later, collectors will still be terrified of fixing the transmission.
I mean, just think about the sheer audacity of Mitsubishi here. Look at these period testing numbers. They launched a significantly heavier car that somehow still outran Honda's all-aluminum mid-engine masterpiece to 60 miles per hour. We're talking 5.1 seconds for the VR-4 versus the NSX's 5.3. They gave you legitimate supercar performance, and they did it while leaving over $26,000 in your pocket.
So, Section 1, Spaceship Tech and Twin Turbos, the engineering flex. To pull off that kind of performance, Mitsubishi didn't just bend the rules of 1990s engineering, they literally threw the rulebook out the window. The sheer volume of active electronics they crammed into this chassis is wild, and it rightfully earned it the nickname of the Japanese Ferrari. Look at this list. Full-time all-wheel drive with a viscous-coupling center differential? Check. Paired with four-wheel steering, making it the very first production AWD car with rear steering? Yep. Toss an active front aero that deployed at speed, an active rear spoiler, an active dual-mode exhaust, and an active electronically controlled suspension system. It's the whole shebang. And to power all of that tech, they relied on the mighty 6G72 V6. Now, the early 1991 to 1993 models pushed an impressive 300 horsepower. But starting in 1994, they bumped it to 320 horsepower, fed by twin Mitsubishi TDO4 turbos and twin intercoolers. And how did they get that power to the ground? Well, the early models made do with a Getrag 5-speed, but starting in 1994, power was routed through this absolute beauty, the legendary Getrag W6MG1 6-speed manual transmission. This is the exact same high-end Italian gearbox that you'd find in exotics from that era, like the Lotus Esprit V8 and the Aston Martin DB7. If you're a tuner, this engine is basically the holy grail. The crucial thing to understand here is that this iron block V6 is massively overbuilt. It's well documented now that these early generation engines will reliably handle 600+ horsepower on their factory internals. Just bolt on bigger turbos, get a proper tune, and you are flying. All right, Section 2, the dark side. The engine bay nightmare. Let's do a reality check, because keeping this 90s spaceship in orbit means facing one of the most notoriously unforgiving engine bays in automotive history. You have a mandatory 60,000-mile timing belt service, and it is absolutely critical. This is an interference engine. If that belt snaps, the V6 destroys itself. That service will run you $1,500 to $2,500. And remember that Italian Getrag transmission? Well, aggressive launches on big power will snap the output shaft, costing you $1,500 to $2,500 to replace, or up to $7,500 for a full transmission. Neglect the oil? You might spin a main bearing and face an $8,000 to $15,000 engine rebuild. Throw in leaky valve stem seals, TDO4 turbo wastegates failing past 100,000 miles, and ECU capacitors that degrade and need recapping or full replacement. And this leads us to the classic running joke among enthusiasts, which is painfully true, by the way. Because that transverse V6 is so suffocated by twin turbos and AWD components, a simple 2-hour job on a normal car instantly becomes an 8-hour nightmare on a VR-4. Literally half the engine has to come out to access anything. And to be perfectly fair, beyond that tight engine bay, you're wrestling a pretty portly 3,790-pound curb weight. You have the 1991 to 1993 5-speed, which is the weakest transmission. Those expensive active suspension actuators, they frequently fail, so lots of owners just rip them out for coilovers. The 4WS rear steering racks are prone to leaking, and you've got your typical 90s consumable failures, brittle interior plastics, and broken window regulators. Section 3, the market context. Comparing JDM legends.
But hey, before you run away scared by that maintenance sheet,
let's look at the actual value proposition in the 2026 collector market. We've covered the Toyota Supra MK4, which is faster and more refined, sure, but it commands $100,000 to $200,000 plus. We've covered the Mazda RX-7 FD, lighter but with worse reliability, sitting at $50,000 to $150,000. We've covered the Nissan 300ZX twin turbo, demanding $30,000 to $80,000, and the collector-grade NSX NA1 is over $200,000. Meanwhile, the VR-4 is sitting right there at $18,000 to $65,000, offering more sophisticated AWD and active tech for a literal fraction of the cost.
So, Section 4, the verdict, buy or buy.
Evaluating that staggering performance pedigree against the terrifying engine bay, where does our channel land? Well, you can't buy them new anymore. Production ended in Japan in 2000. But looking at the used market, it's pretty clear. The 1994 to 1996 six-speed models, trading between $18,000 and $30,000 with 60 to 120,000 miles, are the absolute sweet spot. The facelifted 97 to 99 models sit a bit higher, at $25,000 to $45,000. And that final year ultra-rare 1999 Combat Wing Edition, that is the undeniable collector's pick, pushing $35,000 to $65,000. Look, if you're going hunting for one, you have to treat this checklist like gospel. You must verify a strict 60,000-mile timing belt service history. Check that Getrag 6-speed for synchro wear and output shaft condition. Confirm those active aero motors actually still function. Inspect the ECU for capacitor leakage, and please budget $3,000 to $5,000 in deferred maintenance for any used VR-4 you pick up, just to avoid heartbreak.
So our definitive verdict is a resounding buy. Why? Because the 3000GT VR-4 is one of the most over-engineered, technically advanced, and genuinely undervalued JDM legends left on the board in 2026.
I'll just leave you with this final thought. As the rest of the 90s JDM market has appreciated 5 to 10 times in value over the past decade, isn't it only a matter of time before collectors catch on and realize the VR-4 is the ultimate blue-chip sleeper? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Now get out there and start hunting before the secret really gets out.